After working way too long in the dark, it's time to turn up the brightness. In this video, we're installing a boatload of canless lights, sloped lights, wiring normal switches, three-way switches, and whatever you want to call this. I'm calling this guy the Big Kahuna, and as always, sharing the tips, tricks, and details we learned along the way. Like the kids say these days, let's get lit.
Oh, and it's pretty freaking dim because only one is on.
That's not good. Sneeze.
It's what? Nice? Nice?
It's neat and nice.
It's nice.
This is about the type of light that we've been working in for like 2 years. Very dimly lit and totally reliant on temporary lighting. Like this DeWalt tripod light right behind me. Today's video is going to be all about starting our can light install so we can get some actual wired lights and switches going in here. And we're not working with plug-in strip lights or tripod lights or battery operated flashlights. This is going to make a massive difference in working at night and just general being around in here after the sun goes down. Let's go over the game plan for these guys. The majority of our lights are going to be the HLB 6-inch canless downlight. So it's that flat can, it's got its own junction box, and they are super easy, basically plug and play. We have a couple areas though where we have a steep slope in the ceiling and we didn't want these sort of shining right in our face as we're walking in. It's really the pantry and the bedroom closet. This is a slopable canless downlight, so it's got a little bit of a bigger housing, but you can actually change the angle of the lens. And that way, even on a steep slope ceiling, it will still point the light down rather than directly away from the ceiling like the flat cans do. Halo was gracious enough to send these lights out for this project, so we are really excited to get them installed.
For our lighting layout, there was two things we primarily considered. One being how many lights did we want in each specific area, and then how do we want all of the lights to be switched. So in our main living space, we have 3 different groups. We have one for over the dining area, one over the living space, and then the other over the kitchen. Once we knew our groups, we thought about how we were actually going to be using the spaces and where we'd be turning on lights. And then that's kind of how we decided which switches would go where and what lights are going to be connected to those switches.
Originally, the plan was to use these metal mounting frames that Halo makes to locate the can locations in the ceiling before drywall goes on. We did that with a few of them, but then realized I kind of liked drilling them in afterwards. You're not as reliant on the drywaller guys to remember to route out the can locations, and you can get them much more precisely located without worrying about that metal frame somehow coming loose or shifting. And so we ended up drilling the majority of ours after the fact. We located the wires accordingly though, so that we could easily pull those down. We have a very different ceiling detail than most. We used a Sega Myrex vapor control layer on the ceiling. So we actually built 5-sided boxes above where every one of these can lights goes, and then put a piece of rock wool bat inside that box. That keeps the air barrier continuous with our Sega Myrex layer. These lights do have a gasket on them and they're rated for being airtight, but we wanted to make absolutely sure that Sega layer was continuous and we didn't accidentally compromise it by drilling in after the fact. Now, to locate all of the can lights for where we needed to drill after drywall was up, we originally started by marking the floor with pencil and marker, and then actually when we released our electric lighting rough-in video, someone had a really good comment suggestion to put a drywall screw in the floor where each of the lights needs to go, because after drywall, the floor is just an ocean of white dust and any pencil or marker is definitely gonna be erased. They were 100% right about that. So luckily we took that advice, we put a drywall screw in the floor where every can light was. Then I could use my green dot laser to shine directly up, and I had a perfect spot on the ceiling where I needed to drill my 6-inch hole. Here's the rundown of how these are installed. It's really easy. They come with this junction box that is got the AC to DC converter in it and pre-assembled Wago push connects. This can take 12 or 14 gauge wire, and then it's got these 2 Romex connectors to hold the Romex firm. It's also got 2 regular knockouts as well if you have MC or some other type of wiring. Once you've got the Romex connected up, and you can do either 1 or 2 wires obviously coming in here if it's not the last light in the chain. Close that up, and when it's time to actually connect the light, they separate with this quick connect right in the middle here. You just push those in and it's got this little collar to secure it. But the light does not have a box up in the ceiling or anything. All it does is clip up through the 6-inch hole over top either the metal frame or the drywall or both that you have up in there. and then you're done. It's super, super simple. And these models in particular have a selectable color options. It's for anywhere from 2700K to 5000K, warm to cool light. They come at 3000K by default. It's a pretty warm light. We're gonna keep it there, but we're gonna mount these in a way the switch is easily seen and accessible just by pulling the light out of the ceiling in case you wanna make it any cooler.
Alex decided that he wanted to time himself to see how long it would take. How long did that end up taking you?
That was under 8 minutes from start to finish, and that was my first one in a while, so that was pretty rusty. I bet I can do it in under 5 by the time we get done the next like 20 of these things.
In the bathroom, we have 2 can lights, and then we also have 2 vanity lights. We decided to put them all on one switch since there are no windows in our bathroom and it's pretty dark. I think he's gonna need the temporary light for this.
This one's nice because it's got the soffit ceiling. There's a foot gap in here where there's no insulation or anything. Little secret storage or hiding spot up there.
Oh. So how much are you stripping off of it?
About 3/8 of an inch. It's not much. It's just enough for these little Wago push connectors. Grounds first, and the neutrals, and the hots. Here's the tricky part. So you gotta make sure you can somehow get both of these Romex in the 2 different holes. So they're like 2 inches apart. So I'm gonna bend the 2 wires with an L shape around 2 inches apart. Boom, everything's nice and tucked in there. There she is. There's the switch. Here's my helper, getting all of the cans ready, popping all the junction box tabs open for the Romex connections, getting everything all unboxed. It's always good to have an apprentice with you. I say this as if I'm an actual electrician. I'm not, so take anything I say with a grain of salt. One thing that I had to look up because I was not sure how this worked was these push-in connectors. If you have to get a wire out, how do you do it? Because it does seem like kind of a one-way barb. You push that thing in there and it's pretty solid. Like it will not just pull off on its own. The key is you have to rotate this and like shimmy it off like that. Just a solid straight pull will not do anything. It's tight, but if you do some twisting, then it kind of works its way off and can pull off. So just a little tip if you ever need to take one of these junction boxes off or otherwise remove one of these push-in connectors off of a piece of solid wire. This has been a really handy tool for all of our electrical trim out. This is a Romex wire stripper and it's made by Southwire. Basically just got these 2 little dog bone shaped cutter heads on, one for 12-2 wire, one for 14-2, the most common wires you'll see in electrical roughing in America anyway. And all it really does is score the outside of the jacket just to fit the wires so it doesn't damage any of the actual wire sheaths inside. So you squeeze it a couple times and it makes that score. You can do this with a knife too, but I've found this tool makes it really easy. And sometimes I even go a little bit here to loosen it up on the edges. And then I use the tool itself to grip the wire jacket, twist it off, and then it comes off nice and easy. You got a nice clean cut there, and you're not messing around with the utility knife trying to slice down the wires or anything. And then it's also got these blunt edge grabbers right in the middle, which I've found is good for the paper. The outer paper is pretty easy just to tear off by hand, but sometimes the ground wire paper, sometimes it rips easy, like that one was easy, but sometimes it's kind of stuck. So having this blunt edge tip to pull with is nice, and just something to straighten the wires out with as well. It's got a normal wire stripper in it too, so you can, while you're here, whoops, you can make your strips with this little guy as well, and then you only have one tool to carry around. Now you're ready for the light to be connected. Found the best way to get these things seated up here in the drywall when the hole is a little bit snug. It's honestly just a firm tap. It's these little metal brackets that get hung up at the edge of the drywall, and just by giving that a tap, it just sort of breaks the drywall in a really small area right where that tab needs to be. There it is. Now that one held up pretty snug, but one thing I have found with these guys is they are not, I think, the best air seal you could do if you're going for like a passive level house. That little gasket is really thin and it definitely relies on some tight pressure. of this light up against the drywall. And in a perfect world, that works every time, but in real life, sometimes there's drywall seams, sometimes there's a little bit of paint buildup around the edge, and that gasket doesn't quite air seal like it should, and that's just real life, unfortunately. So I think if you're really trying to go for like super tight ceiling drywall air barrier, I would put some sort of caulk around this. Of course, that makes it a heck of a lot more difficult to remove the light in the future, but just something to note. And in my experience, these don't always sit perfectly flat up against the ceiling. We're wrapped up with all the flat cans in the kitchen, and now we just have to do the two tougher ones, which are the slopable cans here in the pantry and then the main bedroom closet. As you can see, this is a much larger device. You actually do have to carve out a little space in the insulation for this, and it still follows the same principle of it clips in. It's got the little gasket on it, but I'll have to use the insulation knife to cut out a little recess. And not only for that, but the junction box is substantially larger too. You gotta definitely carve out an area of insulation for this to sit in, probably about twice the size of the flat can junction box. I'm not really sure why exactly. I would think it'd be a similar LED, but it has to be a lot bigger, I guess. So we'll have to do a little bit of work with this guy to get these things to fit. Gotta be careful not to cut the wire. Don't want to plunge too deep because I have that Sega box in here as well, which I'm basically gonna have to get all the way to the bottom to get this light to fit all the way up in here. I might just do some hand tearing to get the smaller stuff around the edges out. Let's see, maybe I can leave a little bit left up in there. They must realize that this is a bigger, heavier junction box because they give you this little metal strap with a L-shaped hook on it that you can hook onto the edge of the drywall. So this is just hanging here while you can freely connect the wires without having them under tension. Got the box nicely nested down there. It's hard to dry fit it because these big clamps are in the way. You really got to crank on them because these have a lot of tension behind them. Holy smokes. Will it go? It might go. Oh man, she went. All right, and then probably just do something like that. 30 can lights later, we are all finally done mounting them all in the ceiling, getting them wired up, and now we are on to wiring some of our switches. Here's what we chose for switches. These are Legrand Radiant paddle switches. We just like the look of them, and they're pretty economical, you know, simple paddle switch. As far as the switch plate goes, we're using these decorative cover plates. There's no screws exposed. They're kind of sleek. They just came off Amazon, to be honest. They're pretty cheap. But this plate goes on first over top, 2 small screws connected to the actual switch body. And then this guy snaps over top of that. And there's just, if you ever need to get it off, there's a little screwdriver pry on the bottom to pop it off. We also have some 3-ways and dimmers. This is a 3-way. I can't find the dimmers right now, but they look pretty much identical to the single pole regular paddle switch, except obviously 3-way has another terminal on the back, and the dimmers have a little slider on the side. Elena, our electrical apprentice, is coming around and preparing all the boxes by pulling the Romex wire that we just had kind of curled up in there after roughing, pulling that all out, taking a look, making sure we got labels and everything, taking the labels off because we're going to reuse them to put on the hot leads. So 2 sync pendants is what that says. So that'll go on the hot leads, and then she's stripping all the jacketing off of each cable, separating the grounds, neutrals, hots, and putting the labels back on the hots. Here's an example of this one completed. So we got our ground, this is a simple one because it's just a single switch, but got our grounds, neutrals, and hots separated. Power from main, living switch, so that's our power in. And then this one is 2 lights. Now my job is to come through and actually start installing all of the switches. I'm not an electrician by any means, but my typical process is tying together all the grounds first thing, pigtailing off as many as devices I have. So this is just 1 switch. I only need 1 ground pigtail coming off of this. Then I'll move on to all the neutrals or all the whites. Same deal, except with switches, there is no neutral that gets connected to them. So these neutrals just get tied together with a wire nut, that's it. And then finally the hots, where we actually have to use some brain power. Think about the power coming in, the power going out, and the switch lead for the light. Residential wiring is pretty darn simple when it comes down to it. Just some basic rules to remember and exercising at least a little bit of brain power when you're wiring up the circuits. Switches are probably the hardest thing out of all of them. 3 ways, I'll have to probably refresh my mind on a diagram for that, but they're not that difficult. Single pole switches are of course easier, and receptacles are probably the easiest thing of all because pretty much everything just gets tied together that's the same color. But the nuances are in, like, you know, how many wires you can put under one nut. It's listed right under the side of the bag. How to best dress all the wires so that they sit back into the box nicely. Wrapping the end of the wire around the screw terminals the appropriate way. Just little things like that that if you haven't done at least 1 or 2 of them before or watched someone, whether it be in person or on video, that knew what they were doing, you probably just wouldn't even think about it. This has been a really handy tool too for twisting these wire nuts. Super cheap on Amazon. Saves your wrist. That backing out of the way. One thing it took me too long to learn was it's much easier to pigtail. Everything's cut the same length to start with. Some people pre-twist, some people don't. I've found that it typically works just fine without a pre-twist, as long as all the wires are the same length when they go into the wire nut. Wago connectors are also another nice little thing. They're more expensive for sure, but they don't harm the wire at all. They don't twist the end up. So every now and then I'll just use one just because. If it's a crowded box, I'll definitely use them. But for some of these easy switches, it's not a big deal just to spin the wire nut on. Now I just need to pigtail these 2 powers together. So we got our power in, power out. Those get pigtailed into one lead. We have our switch lead and we have our ground for the switch. And that's it. I've also found there's like 2 philosophies in putting the wire back into the box. There's the roll method, rolling it back in, or there's the zigzag method, folding it and doing like something like that, pushing it back in. I like the roll for when I'm initially putting these pigtails back in, and then when you get the device on, to zigzag that like an accordion it back into the box. Just so everything sits back nice, exactly how you expect it's going to. With the roll, you can still get your hands back in there to reposition things as needed if it doesn't sit quite right. Switches aren't very deep. I guess they're not unlike a normal receptacle, but they don't take up a ton of space in the box, which is really helpful. Before I bend my little curlicues on the ends of these, I sort of eyeball up where the screw is on the switch. So this is the ground. I know that the wire has got to come around this way. So when I position this, I'll make sure I bend that piece of copper that way. Same thing with the 2 hots. Both screws are on the side here, so the wires need to come from the bottom up and around. So I will twist these upwards with my needle nose. To actually get this thing to close over top, I found an easier way than just trying to clamp it with the needle nose, is if you start cranking this down and it's going the right way, the screw will actually pull the end of the wire closed once it starts getting tight. It might be hard to see that, but the screw closed the wire eyelet for me. It's not a fully closed loop, but it's closed enough that it won't slide off the screw if the thing were ever to come loose. You can see how that guy closed up a little bit. I also make sure there's no insulation underneath the screw that would prevent contact from the copper. And this guy is ready to get pushed back in. Leave that a little bit loose for now until we get our switch plate cover on. Kind of eyeball it straight up and down. Any last minor adjustments, and tighten these screws down. She's done. All the easy single pole switches are done now. Now things get a little bit trickier though, because I'm gonna start on our 3-way switches. As we come into the main living space, there's 4 boxes that contain 3-way switches. The first being the one right to the left on the inside of the door. There's a second one way over there right next to the dishwasher. The third one is what I would consider the main switch bank. It's a 4-gang switch bank right there in the middle of the hallway. And then the last one is right over there next to the door. When we roughed in the wiring for the lighting with three-way switches, we followed the same convention for all the different three-ways. There's a few ways you can wire up a three-way. It all depends on where the light fixture is on the circuit, whether it's between the two switches or whether it's at the end. And we took the simple method in all cases and made the light fixture the very last thing on the switch with the two switches in line prior to getting to the light fixture. So power enters the first switch with a 14-2 wire, a 14-3 wire connects the first and second switch, and then finally another 14-2 wire goes from the second switch to the light fixture. The beauty of a three-way, of course, is that either of the two switches can supply power to the fixture regardless of the position of the other switch. I'm gonna start on the easy guy here by the main door, and I've already sort of dressed these wires up. Really helped us to have labels on everything. This is the second switch in the three-way circuit. So these are the two travelers coming from the first switch, and this is the final power wire that goes out to the cans. Similar here for the pendants. This is the final wire that goes to our pendants above our island, and these two are connecting the second switch here to the first switch by the dishwasher. And you can see I've already tied together all my neutrals and grounds and tucked them back in there. For the ground, I actually had to make a second pigtail because I could only get a maximum of 5 wires underneath this red cap here. So I have 5 14 gauge wires under that. That 5th wire comes out to another yellow cap here where I branch off 2 pigtails for that for the 2 switch grounds. And of course, no neutrals get connected to the switches. So it's just these 2 ground wires and 3 black and red wires each. Here's my Legrand Radiant 3-way. Looks just like a normal single pole switch, except it's got an extra traveler terminal here. So the black wire, the hot, goes into this. The 2 travelers connect to the gold screws, and of course the green connects to the bare copper ground. So this is my 2 cans line coming to the common terminal. This is my first traveler coming to the first gold terminal, and then my other traveler, this guy, will go to the other side. These have these screw clamps on these switches. I might start using those. It's definitely a lot more secure than just the push-in style that are just relying on a little spring clamp. I kind of like the idea of the screw clamp. Probably holds it pretty darn secure. I mean, that's how circuit breakers are held in, a similar screw clamp. So I was wiring some receptacles down in the garage last night to start on that, and it is just insane the difference between wiring 14 and 12 gauge, how much easier it is to wire 14 gauge. This is like nothing working on these switches compared to the receptacles that are all 12 gauge all throughout the house, which we wanted to do just for, you know, robustness reasons. But my gosh, is the 14 easier to work with. I can see why a lot of electricians exclusively use 14 gauge for everything residential, unless it's, you know, like a dedicated circuit for the kitchen or anything like that. Like all the normal bedroom outlets get 14 gauge. It's just so much easier to work with. I gotta try to keep this somewhat neat so we get it back into the box. Luckily, these switches are pretty low profile. The easy 1 out of 4 is done. I don't know if you could tell at the end of that time lapse, but I'm pretty careful to use that little orange torpedo level to make sure the switch is nice and plumb or nice and level, however you want to say it. Elena is very particular about the switches being level. It's one of her pet peeves, is if it's even a little bit off kilter, she's gonna spot it. So I gotta make sure that each one of these, including all the receptacles, is nice and straight and level, and wiping all my dirty fingerprints off the wall. I've already gotten in trouble a couple times for this, so I gotta make sure I keep doing that going forward. Moving on to the dishwasher switch. Look at this, this is just a thing of beauty. You can tell Elena was the one who wrote these labels because my handwriting is not nearly this neat. That's just amazing. There she is, thing of beauty. A really handy tool that I had to use for that switch in particular were those little yellow plastic caterpillar shims, I believe they're called, just little stackable plastic shims that go behind the top of the switch tang, which is the little metal pieces at the top and bottom that usually sit against the drywall surface and give the switch something to rest on. Well, if the drywall is cut too large around the outlet box, they don't sit. In that case, it was. So the little yellow guys sit back against the blue box and provide some backing support for the tops and bottoms of the light switches. So I actually had to use it on all 3 of the top of those. Took care of this guy while I was at it, and also that guy over there. And of course, I saved the hardest light switch for last. I'm calling this guy the big kahuna because there is just so many wires coming into this. I did have to double check that my volume of this box is appropriate. There's 8 wires total in this. 6 of them are 14.2 and 2 of them are 14.3. You can double check me on this, but it's a 60 cubic inch box, and I believe I only need 58 cubic inches of space technically for 4 switches, 6 14.2 wires and 2 14.3 wires. This is kind of like the main hub switch. We have the home run coming in from the panel in here, 2 power feeds to other switches, control for the dining chandelier, control for the dining cans is a 3-way, control for the main cans is a 3-way, because this is like where we'd shut the lights off at the end of the night rather than having to walk to the entry door. So I'm just gonna take my time, stripping everything down, making sure all the labeling's good, and take our time wiring it up. Upon further inspection, 3 of these wires are sending power to other switches and 1 is the home run. So 4 out of the 8 wires are just power wires, and then the other 4 obviously for the devices in the box, the 4 switches. We probably could have done a slightly better job in rough-in sending power to these other boxes from other places than this main switch, but it should work just fine. We can just tuck all these power wires in the very back of the box. That'll be the first thing we do. Tie all those together, pigtail off as many hots as we need, tie our neutrals together, and shove any wire that's not going to be in a switch to the back of the box. I've realized the importance of having a good, sharp, fresh razor blade for this step, because it makes scoring through that jacket 10 times easier. You don't have to put any pressure on it at all, and it pops right open. You have a dull knife, you have to put way too much pressure on it and just risk cutting yourself, cutting through the wire jacketing deeper than you want to. Just have a sharp knife for that. George, can I help you? Well, another thing I wanted to talk about before George is pulling my pants down over here. Crazy old dog. Something else I wanted to mention was my tool belt. Hey, get out of here. Come on, George. I'm trying to talk about my tool belt on camera here. So this is one of our Diamondback tool belts. This is actually Elena's, but I've reconfigured it to be the electrical belt, and it is really a great belt for this purpose. Front and center, this little DB Sachs pouch is my trash pouch. You generate so much little bits of garbage, tiny pieces of wire and insulation, stuff exactly like this that would just end up on the floor if you didn't have a little pouch to put it in. And this is the perfect solution for that. Have that front and center to be stripping wires and cutting wires into. The main side pouch is Diamondback's Clavo setup. It's got a utility sheath in it and pencils and markers, which I really like. Little spot for my level, lineman's pliers is sort of a flat pocket here. Keep my Phillips head screwdriver and quick wire strippers in this pocket, and then the pouch here is all wire nuts. On the other side, I took my Solo impact holster off of my tool belt and put that here because I use that so often. Have my little Romex stripper clipped on here and flathead screwdriver. On the back side is where I keep these needle nose pliers, nice little sheath there, a flashlight in case you run into that, and I have a holster for my phone that clips on the back of me to keep that out of harm's way. I haven't really shared a tool belt setup before, but I have been refining this one for quite a while, doing all of these electrical switches and outlets. So if you're on the Diamondback system or looking to switch into something at all, it's a really nice setup. I really like it. Starting to look a little bit more organized. I got my grounds and neutrals separated from all the hots up here. These are in bundles of 4. I can get 5 14 gauge wires under 1 red wire tie. So the neutrals, I can just pigtail these 2 together with 2 red wire nuts, and the neutrals will be done. I'll have 5 wires under each. They'll be good to go. I'll tuck them back. The grounds are a little bit more difficult because I have to create 4 grounds for my switches. There's a number of different ways to link grounds to help create grounds. I'm just going to be pigtailing. I'll be using one of these green ground wire nuts. It's the same as a regular wire nut, except there's a hole in the end. So you can just cut back 3 of the 4 wires in this bundle, throw this guy on one of them, and you've reduced 4 wires down to 1. Then I can pigtail those 2 together and have 2 other leads coming off of each one for a total of 4 other pigtails coming out for the different 4 switches. And that is how I can tie all 8 of these ground wires together and generate 4 leads. Give these guys a little bit of a head start pre-twist. These greenies are rated for a max of 4 number 14s. So that's what I got. Neutrals are done. I thought I had the neutrals kind of where I wanted them, but I did not like how they laid back in the box, so I am switching to Wago 5 connector lever locks for the neutrals. I'll connect them with this long jumper right here, and then they'll tuck nicely and neatly back into the box like that. Before it was kind of a mess in the middle. I only had them linked with that short little jumper. This is much nicer. I think I'm gonna do the same thing for the grounds too. Now that I have these 2 single leads, I can just come off of both sides of these with my 4 wires that I need to hit the switches and 1 jumper to link these 2 together. These Wagos just make life way too easy. Having these little levers you open up, boom, stick the wire in, shut it, you're done. It's a lot easier than the wire nuts, I will admit that. They're a little bit more costly. I think that's really the only con of the Wagos. Otherwise, they're pretty much easier and better in all regards. Some people are afraid they melt from the current or something. This is a light switch to all LEDs, so not too crazy worried about that. And here is as neat as I can make that. Now we are finally on to the hots. This is how I'm gonna make the other whole set of 4 leads. Boom. 2 5-position Wagos. Holy smokes. That took forever, but it's done. Gotta clean this wall off. My handprints are all over it. I think in total I've spent like an hour and a half, 2 hours working on this one box. I'm curious to see how long it would take a real good electrician to do the same thing with the same level of like neatness, I guess. Not that that was the neatest thing in the world, but I at least didn't just shove everything back willy-nilly. But there's just a lot of stuff that goes into a 4-gang box with 8 different wires coming to it. Lots of stripping, labeling, figuring out what goes where and what you're gonna tie together, how you're gonna do it. And it also did not help that 3 of the devices were these 3-way dimmers from Legrand that are pretty big and bulky, so they take up more room than a normal switch, and I really had to be careful about how I would put everything back in the box that those would fit too. So if you're an electrician and you had to do something similar on a 4-gang box, how long would it take you? I'm curious. With all the can lighting installed upstairs, we are finally ready to get them fired up. I capped off all of the light switches that were not going to be used, so we should be safe to still energize the circuit without those lights actually being hooked up. These 4 white 14-2 Romex wires are all of the lights in this whole house. I have 2 home runs for the downstairs lights and 2 for the upstairs. And I was thinking I might split the circuits, but I added up all of the current draws of all the lights upstairs and down, and I realized that it's just kind of unnecessary to waste another couple breaker spaces. I'm actually going to pigtail these 2 together. Some breakers have the ability to accept 2 different home run wires, and I thought mine actually did. It turns out that the AFCI GFCI combo breakers only have 1 spot. So I'm gonna pigtail these wires together before hooking them into the breaker, and that should be just fine. I'm just basically treating the main panel like a junction box. So I'm just gonna follow my usual procedure of stripping all of the jacketing off. These things are a little bit long though, so I'm probably gonna trim off quite a bit here at the end of the day. Don't mind the mess of this panel. I'll probably do a whole separate video on just wiring all the rest of the breakers in for the receptacles and making this much neater. But for now, I just want to get these lights hooked up, so just got to get it done for now. I'll leave myself plenty of slack to come back and neaten things up a little bit later. Also, one thing to know, as you can probably tell by the temporary overhead lighting, this is a live panel, so I'm being really careful about not getting too close to the panel while I'm working, and I'm going to be extra careful when it's time to actually go push the breakers in, make sure the breakers are off, and stay well clear of these center bus bars. All right, we're all wired up with these 2 breakers for our lighting, and it is the moment of truth to finally flip everything on. This is gonna be awesome. Some lights probably will come on because there's 3-way switches, and if one of the switches happens to be in the right position, then it will just be on when I turn this breaker on. So here goes nothing. The first thing is to get rid of these temporary lights we have strung up here and try out our permanently wired utility room lights. So let's do that. 3, 2, 1.
Woohoo!
Would you look at that? That's a beauty. And these are on medium power. We'll do a whole separate video on all of the garage lighting install, which are these LED strip lights. They're dimmable and there is a color selectable range on this as well. So we can make them whiter if we want to, or yellower. They're right in the middle right now, but our temp lights were more white, but I kind of like the yellow in here. It's kind of relaxing.
Yeah, it's not as intense.
It's neat.
It's what? Neat?
I can say it's
nice.
neat. It's neat and nice. It's neat.
Where are you gonna go to next? Ooh, it looks like something's on over there.
Looks like one of our can lights is on here, the stair entry light. There are actually a few more going up the stairs here that are decorative, but this is the one, I think it's this guy right here, yep. This is a three-way switch because we're at the bottom of a staircase, so there's another switch that operates this upstairs. And then these should be outdoor lights. I don't see anything coming on though. Oh. Well, our outdoor sconces are working, but we bought cheap old Amazon light bulbs, and this is what we get. I think Sunco is the brand of these things, and they flicker / don't work at all. We actually took the bulb out of that far one to experiment with a different light, and yeah, we realized that something is wrong with these, so we gotta get new ones. But there's at least power to them, which is good enough. These are where the other lights will be on the walls coming up, 2 sconces, and then at the top here, a little chandelier pendant.
Looks like the fire alarms are working.
There are green lights on all of the fire alarms, which means they have power to them. That's good. The upstairs living space, let's go. Look at that. Nice. Okay, so that's all 8 cans for the kitchen. That is wonderfully bright.
There's the dining area.
Dining room. Nice.
And these ones are dimmable.
Yep.
And these ones.
Yep, they're all dimmable. Living room. I have these on a regular switch. I got to make that a dimmer because that's really bright. This is going to be so much nicer for working up here with no temp
worked.
lighting. And
could you see that? That looks like it's the spotlights.
we have spotlights now. Sneak peek to the deck. They don't stay on for long. I think just a few seconds when you first turn them on. Check out the pantry. Again, we only have the 1 can in here. Cool. And it's working. Slopable can. And then we'll also have a decorative chandelier right up here, right there. And we'll also have these under cabinet lightings on the same switch. So this pantry will be much brighter eventually. The hall's well lit. Let's check the bathroom.
Let's see the bathroom. This is the one I'm most nervous about. Ooh.
Look at that. That is bright.
That is very bright.
That is bright. And again, we have the decorative lighting above the vanity here wired to the same switch. So all those lights will come on at the same time. That's going to be pretty bomb. Main bedroom.
Perfect.
Beauty.
Oh, I'm glad we put in the can.
Yeah, without the cans, it definitely would have been a lot dimmer with just a center fixture.
We just have like shadows.
Yeah, there'd be shadows everywhere. Closet.
Wow, that's super bright.
Definitely bright with the slopable up here as well as the flat up top. Office.
This one is dimmable. Oh, and it's pretty freaking dim because only one is on.
Uh-oh. That's not good.
Oh no.
All right, so we got 1 out of 4 lit in the office. That could be an issue. There must be a bad connection from this one to the next. I hope that's the case anyway, and that there's not some wiring error that's up in the attic, because this is nearly impossible to get to now that we have insulation and everything upstairs. So cross your fingers that the error can be corrected from just inside these lights. We'll see.
We may be looking back at past videos.
Might be slightly dimmer in here for a while.
This is the laundry nook.
And that's an 8-inch. That's one just big 8-inch. Yeah, that'll work well.
That's a wrap.
It is so nice to have lighting up here that is just done by a switch. We have been relying on our handy tripod light and these temporary plug-in strip lights that were $20 on Amazon for way too long, and I am so thrilled to finally have lighting in here. Went ahead and turned the circuit off to take a look at this guy. Really hoping it's just something simple in this light. Or it could also be a bad connection at the next light in the chain. Got 2 wires going into the box. These are all these push-in Wago connectors, so you can actually see. Oh wait, I think a hot wire pulled out. I think I found the problem. That wire right there should not just be hanging out in no man's land. So that must have slipped out of here. I must not have had that fully engaged, or I just forgot to plug it in. Probably the latter. So I'm gonna plug this in, hit the breaker again, and see if this works. All right, I got her dangling. The breaker's back on. Let's see. Oh, thank goodness. Yep, that's exactly what it was. That was so easy and I'm so happy about it. That's a wrap on can lights. If there's a takeaway that I'll use on future projects, it's put in good temporary lighting early on in the project, one that you can just flip a single switch and the whole project's lit up. That way you're not wasting time plugging, unplugging, changing cords. If you plan to be working at night, it'll just make life a lot easier. As always, thanks for watching and we'll see you on the next one.